Hey guys, this is going to be a real quick video. I was getting some work done, and whenever I open a new browser, I have a news ticker going. And I see this story that we have two former West Virginia correctional officers sentenced on federal civil rights charges in connection with the death of an inmate. So we talk a lot on this channel and so many other spaces where we all meet each other. When do we get accountability for some of the things that we hear about, some of the things that go on in the prison system? So we've got a little bit going on here that we have some accountability. We're going to look at a press release from the Department of Justice and then another article with two extra details that I think are important from the Associated Press. But the short of it, you guys, it's taken a couple years to get here. We've got make this bigger. And shout out to FFS, Boop is right. Boop right back. Two former correctional officers from the Southern Regional Jail in Beaver, West Virginia, were sentenced today for their roles in an assault that resulted in the death of a pretrial detainee, identified by the initials QB, on March 1st of 2022. So, taken us 3 years to get here. So the officers, Mark Holdren, 41, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Johnathan Walters, 33, was sentenced to 21 years in prison. So not quite a slap on the wrist. Holdren and Walters had each pleaded guilty to conspiring with other officers to violate inmate QB's civil rights, resulting in QB's death. Now, before we keep reading this press release, I want to go over to this article because I think this context is crazy. So, from the Associated Press, we get additional context. Quantez Burks, they give the full name. He was 37. He was a pretrial detainee who died less than 1 day after he was booked into the jail in Beaver on a wanton endangerment charge. Less than 1 day. Like, when Burks tried to push past an officer to leave his housing unit, okay, fair enough, right? Not so much. He was taken to an interview room where he was handcuffed and restrained while officers, including Holdren and Walters, assaulted him. So they restrain him. They take him to another room and start restraining him instead of just dealing with, hey, you can't leave and push past us. You've got to stay in your unit now. We'll bring your food to you. They take him somewhere and they give him a beating. This was less than a day after he's booked. So let's get back over to what the Department of Justice found. So, according to court documents filed in connection with their guilty pleas, Holdren responded to a call for officer assistance after QB tried to push past another correctional officer and leave his assigned pod. When Holdren arrived, officers were engaged in resisting QB. Now, I wonder if this is on surveillance, because right here, the way they're wording this, the information that we're getting from the court documents the DOJ is referencing here just says that the reason Holdren responds is because he's getting a verbal request where this other correctional officer is saying he tried to push past me. So I don't even know if there's truth behind that claim. When Holdren arrived, officers were engaged in restraining QB. Holdren began using force against QB, including multiple knee strikes that he knew were unreasonable. And again, a lot of these, there are certain standard operating procedures. I don't know the specifics here in this facility, but there can be standard operating procedures where you can't do certain maneuvers. And based on the language here, that seems like the case. Holdren and other officers then conspired to violate QB's civil rights by unlawfully assaulting him as punishment for his attempt to leave the pod. As a part of the conspiracy, Holdren and other officers brought QB to an interview room where Walters joined them. In the interview room, Holdren and other officers used unreasonable force against QB, including striking QB in the head multiple times, kicking, knee striking him, pulling and twisting his fingers, and using pepper spray, all while QB was restrained, handcuffed, and posed no threat to anyone. Guys, this is 2022, this man's first day booked. After assaulting QB in the interview room, officers transported him to another pod. During the transport, QB became limp and was unable to walk on his own. Walters and other officers then, so he can't walk. Do you think he's that much of a threat right now if he's gone limp? So Walters and other officers then carried QB by his arms and legs to the pod's entryway door. where Walters admitted he used unreasonable force to swing QB's head into the metal door to open the door. You have how many officers here that are all hooting and hollering to assault somebody? And I don't know, even if you're using one officer for each limb, right? That would be 4 officers. It seems like there may have been more than 4 present. No one could use their hands to open this door. They use this guy's skull when he's already, showing signs of some type of injury or, not being fully there. Walters and other officers then carried QB into a cell where they dropped the unresponsive and handcuffed QB onto the concrete floor. So he's been handcuffed this whole time. Shortly thereafter, see, I'm yelling at the computer. Shortly thereafter, responding emergency medical personnel declared that QB was deceased. With their guilty pleas, Holdren and Walters each further admitted knowing that the interview room, this is critical, right? Because we hear these claims. We heard the same type of claim in some of the complaints about Rice Street, and we see it with other facilities too, where, often you'll be taken to an area where, it's dark or it's shadowy or the cameras don't catch it. So here the DOJ is, we have this finding through this guilty plea where these corrections officers are saying, yeah, that's exactly what we do. They say we took QB to an interview room that had a blind spot, meaning there were no surveillance cameras to record what happened there. Holdren and Walters were aware that prior to the assault of QB on March 1st, 2022, officers would bring inmates, including pretrial detainees, who had engaged in misconduct to the blind spots in the jail, so that officers could use unreasonable force without being captured on video, thereby avoiding accountability for their actions. Holdren and Walters each further admitted knowing that officers could not use unreasonable force to punish inmates, including pretrial detainees such as QB. Holdren and Walters are 2 of 6. So there were 6 guys. There were 6. That's the thing. So you have 6 of them. Somebody could have opened the door. Like, all of this is unreasonable, but that's just exceptionally unreasonable. So 6 were indicted in this case. In November of 2024, defendant Corey Snyder pleaded guilty in connection with the use of unreasonable force against QB, resulting in his death. Jacob Booth pleaded guilty in August 2024 for failing to intervene and protect QB from the officer's assault. Sentencing hearings for Snyder and Booth are scheduled for, that's today. Hold on, do we have? So this press release was yesterday. Okay, the only news I see so far is just bringing back up this press release. So there's supposed to be 2 more sentences coming down for these 2 individuals. In August 2024, Ashley Toney pleaded guilty to failing to intervene to protect QB from the officer's assault. On June 9th, District Court Judge Joseph R. Goodwin sentenced Toney to 78 months in prison. All right, so that's like, 6 years and change? On January 27th, a federal jury returned a guilty verdict at trial for the 6th indicted defendant, Chad Lester, a former lieutenant at the Southern Regional Jail, finding him guilty on 3 obstruction of justice charges. So this is the cover-up, you guys, for his role in conspiring to cover up the death of QB. On May 15th, Judge Goodwin sentenced Lester to 210 months in prison. Prior to the indictment of the above 6 defendants, former corrections officer Stephen Nicholas Wimmer and Andrew Fleischman, not to be confused with the attorney Andrew Fleischman, each pleaded guilty to conspiring to use unreasonable force against Burks. On May 8th, Chief U.S. District Court Judge Frank Volk sentenced Wimmer to 108 months in prison. Fleischman, okay, so that guy, we have Fleischman sentencing July 14th. So 3 more sentences we've got to hear. Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon. She's done a lot of, do you guys know Ariadna Jacob? I think she's starting to become more known as an influencer. Right now, she's covering the new case that Alan Jackson has with the car crash on a dangerous California roadway. But she herself sued the New York Times for libel and also sued Taylor Lorenz. And I believe Harmeet Dillon was her attorney, helped represent her in that action. But yeah, so Harmeet Dillon is here. And let's see. FBI Pittsburgh field office investigated this case. So there you go. There you go. We do like to talk about accountability here. We don't like to just hear the sad stories. We like to hear that there's outcomes on the other end. We've got one more detail that was not covered in the press release. Let's see. Here, so the cover-up. So prior to the indictment, then the state medical examiner's office. The state medical examiner's office. We just did a stream, I think it was the most recent stream on this channel, where we looked at an incredible case of like cronyism with the state medical examiner. They didn't really have a state medical examiner, so they would outsource things to a certain, not really even certified forensic person to do these autopsies over in Mississippi. And that forensics guy that they relied on loved to work with someone that relied on junk bite mark science and was seen at least one time creating bite marks on the deceased to say, hey, there's bite marks here and they match this suspect. So speaking of medical examiners behaving badly, in this case, we have the state medical examiner's office attributing Burke's primary cause of death to natural causes. So his family seeks a private autopsy. The family's attorney revealed at a news conference in late 2022 that the second autopsy found Burke's had multiple areas of blunt force trauma on his body. Yeah, seeing this detail after what we just read from the Department of Justice, doesn't it seem a little weird? Oh, we had to do a whole second autopsy to notice that there's multiple areas of blunt force trauma. When we're hearing that this guy was restrained and beaten and then used to battering ram open a door. Just nuts. Just nuts. So, good on them for getting there. And this additional context here that the case, it drew scrutiny to the conditions. There was a civil suit filed, a class action suit, and in November of 2023, so before these prosecutions by the DOJ, West Virginia agreed to pay $4 million. $4 million. It's not really a lot to settle a class action lawsuit filed by the inmates there. The judge recommended a default judgment and cited the intentional destruction of records in the case. That led to the firing of former Division of Corrections and Rehabilitation Executive Officer Brad Douglas. It's too bad, so sad, Brad Douglas, and Homeland Security Chief Counsel Phil Sword. Too bad, so sad, Phil Sword. So there you go. Let me link you guys this article with the additional context. It's a syndication from the Associated Press through MSN. So I hope that gets our friends in Europe around any GDP walls. So there's that article there. But yeah, you guys, I saw this come up on my news ticker. I was like, holy moly, somebody's being held accountable. Wanted to get together and go over that. I miss you guys too. I've been in the bushes working. I'm about to go over and check out Millionaire Mel, who just started watching the YNW Melly. Millionaire Melly is covering Melly Trial 1 to get ready for the September 10th Trial 2 for YNW Melly. This will redirect over there. Trakeisha, good to see you. Special Bendy Bros. Hola, right back at you. One of my few Spanish words that I know. What the F, perfect name for the occasion. Isabella, missed you too, but I've caught you around in some other chats. We've bumped into each other. Factual Lie is here. Factual Lie is who I have in mind, hoping to provide an article that isn't blocked by GDPR. Torres, good to see you. Yeah, and that's the thing, FFS gave him a beating. It's like, this is the type of thing where it's like, you can picture it happening, but you don't usually get the admission or have the evidence to show it. So it just gets swept under the rug. A different recent example is the New York case with Robert Brooks, where there's the surveillance footage of what, like 12 to 14 people standing around, and big indictments came down with that case as well. And there's still a ton of turmoil and you know hunger strikes and lack of clarity about how inmates are being treated across different facilities in the New York DOSD Department of Correction system. Um, but that's one recent example. And I believe I forget where, but there's another somewhere in Texas. There's a facility. I saw the article last week where 3 inmates died in 48 hours, and one of those inmates had only been there for like 2 days, and they were awaiting trial. Right, they're pre-trial detainees. So for this stuff to happen sucks, but there's scrutiny now. There's a spotlight on these issues, and it's nice to see. As much as I'm critical of prosecutors when I think prosecutors are doing things wrong, we've got an outcome, a favorable outcome for justice here today. Hey, Nicola, good to see you. What's wrong with these officers? Probably a lot individually, and I think it just gets worse in a group where nobody calls it out. Um, you know, just that group effect. Shannon Alexander here for the 9-month anniversary. Good to see you and hope you're doing well. Um, yeah, so Darth, I don't know why they weren't charged or how they were charged. It seems like maybe they didn't know which to actually pin it to specifically. So, but it is, to me, it is interesting that, we have multiple charges. It's not just one fall guy. Even those that weren't charged because they weren't present, we're still seeing people lose their positions, right? We saw 2 people lose their executive roles, which is, sometimes one person gets arrested, one person takes the fall, and then they're like, oh, we held someone accountable. Everyone else is in the clear. So I don't really know why someone wasn't charged with more. But I'm a bit surprised to see so many people charged and either convicted or they took the pleas. So, yeah, Trikisha, I agree. This happens way too much. And yeah, can't imagine what we don't hear about. Trikisha, a friend, you have a friend that works internal affairs. Oh, so the ones that deal with this specifically in the prison system in New Jersey, the stories are horrific. Yeah, and that's gotta be a tough thing to hear day in and day out. Definitely the type of job that you've got to make sure your mental health is okay. Because you see me getting on the screen, I get angry. I yell at my computer screen as I'm reading these things. And, I'm not immersed in it every second of my job, of my work. So that seems like an honorable job, but a tough job. Oh my gosh, factual lie. Hold on, let me get Judge McAfee's YouTube link for you guys. This might interest you guys. Factual lie says Judge Scott McAfee is presiding over a case where the lead investigator told the witness to lie on the stand. Fulton County, you guys, Fulton County. Let's see. Scott McAfee. He streams his trials. Okay, State v. Roderick. I couldn't remember the name. So Roderick Teasley. I see Candace over in the chat over there. So you'll see some familiar faces if you want to go check out the Roderick trial. What a typical thing to hear coming out of a Fulton County prosecution. Scott McAfee. Just crazy. Oh no. Miranda says, I went to school with Mark Holdren, one of the CEOs who was charged. I was shocked. It's always crazy to hear a familiar name in the news. Like, even when it's like good news, too, it's crazy to hear it. Oh, I know that person. But then to hear something like this, it's like, yeesh. Ugh. Cash Money Cass, hello. Good to see you. Sire, good to see you. Sire, Sire says, when I was younger, I had seen them get away with more stuff than they get held accountable for. Sad. Yeah, and I still think we're seeing this today, but I still think it's like, just like the tip of the iceberg, I guess would be the phrase. I almost said the icing on the cake. That's the wrong way. The tip of the iceberg. And exactly that, JC from the D, then they tried to cover it up. So, and I'm very glad that the cover up was also part of the prosecution here. And similar with the Robert Brooks case, some of the charges are for people that, the conspiracy to cover it up, even though they weren't the ones actually committing any type of physical assault. The prosecution is including, well, you tried to make it go away, and that's not okay. Oh my gosh, Atkins is the lead prosecutor. Hold on, can we see his arms wave? Let me find him in a still, you guys, and switch over there real quick. Nothing is out of reach for Atkins. Oh, and they're watching interviews, I see, with the detectives. Scrolling through here. Where do we get Atkins? Oh, wait. Nope. Did they just not get him in any of these angles? Oh, look at their lunch screen. Nice. All right, guys. So you got to check out Scott McAfee's court stream. Check out this Roderick Teasley case. Is that him right there? There we go. There's Atkins.
Is this the first interview when you spoke to him that he admitted to any type of statement or argument with Dravion?
This is the first time, yes, that he mentioned a debate. Yes.
So there we go, you guys. Let me drop this link one more time if you want to head over there. Again, the redirect for this stream is going to go over to Millionaire Mel. In the description of this video, or if you go to Millionaire Mel's channel, she just had Tiffany Adams, the Fit Lawyer ATL, on for an interview yesterday. They talked about the Munktunk case, some things that, I haven't talked about over on this channel. And even if I did, hearing it from Tiffany, hearing it from Mel, I love both of them. So make sure you check that out as well. In addition to, she's streaming the YNW Melly trial 1 today. So here is McAfee in the chat again one more time. Again, he has his own YouTube channel. It's like Scott McAfee Courtroom. And then the name of, so interestingly, I looked at the press release after, but the articles, the coverage, it's Quantez Burke. So the articles are providing the name. The Department of Justice press release didn't, but AP, Associated Press, did. So that was the name there. Torres wants to take a quick poll. You guys want to round this up with the poll? Who's worse, Fulton County or Massachusetts? Well, this is a county versus state. So are we doing like a Norfolk County versus Fulton County? Because I don't know, Norfolk County might be coming close based on, some issues they're having in other cases beyond Karen Reed. And we've got a whole bunch of the news. The big news in the Karen Reed adjacent world is it's not just Trooper Proctor that was, transferred. And then eventually we find out he gets suspended and loses his job. But now it's happening to other officers that were involved in the Karen Reed investigation. They're getting transferred. We don't know what's going to happen. Who knows? They're lining up to be, neck and neck with Fulton County. Yeah, Cash says, don't make me choose. Factual Lie says 50-50. Yeah, there we go. And Chad Diggy, good to see you. All right, you guys, so I wanted to share that quick. I saw it in the middle of work, which I unfortunately have to get back to. But got a quick call to make. But after that, I'll be in the chats looking at, I guess, this Roderick Teasley case, as well as checking out what Mel's got going on for the YNW Melly rewatch. Again, YNW Melly trial is set to start September 10th. They're not going to delay it anymore. So the guy's been in custody for over 1,900 days. So the judge is like, let's go. And guys, that is a Florida case. First ended in a hung jury, so mistrial. Trial 2, different prosecutors. And it's one of the death penalty cases in Florida that's going to try out the 8-4 rule, where you no longer need all 12 jurors to unanimously agree on a death sentence. Only 8 of the 4 need to agree during the sentencing phase. If he's found guilty unanimously by all 12, during the sentencing phase where the jury would get to decide, only 8 of them need to say, nope, there aren't enough mitigating factors here, and or there's enough aggravating factors here that the death penalty is warranted. Only 8 of 12 need to agree. So regardless of whether you're interested in the YNW Melly case or not, it's an interesting policy change to be aware of in relation to Florida capital cases. Yeah, and Proctor's appealing. I can't wait to see how that goes. Holy moly. I want to see the argument. And there you go, you guys. So again, this is going to carry us over to Millionaire Mel. Make sure you check out that interview with the fit lawyer on Mooktunk. And if you want to rewatch what I mentioned earlier about bad bite mark evidence, bad experts that are leading to wrongful convictions that are now, decades later, being overturned, really a cronyism type of medical examiner service being run in Mississippi and a few other states. That was the most recent stream that we did. So go check that out. That was some more crazy stuff. And really no accountability there. The one guy retired, the other guy's dead. So no accountability, just decades of people serving sentences that they were wrongfully convicted for. So there you go. Hope more change like this, more accountability like what we saw today comes about. And for Always Forever for Life, good to see you. We're going to end by saying hi and bye to For Always Forever for Life. Thanks so much, you guys, for popping in. See you next time, or see you in the chat somewhere. Bye, guys.